That's awesome. Cool, man. Whew. All right. Holy smokes, it's Hot Mike. Welcome back to the show. Today, I have a very exciting guest, but before we get to his intro, make sure to like and subscribe. We got episodes coming out every single week of Hot Mike. Okay, so today's guest, he's the founder of Salt Media. He's the co-founder of Zeiser Motors, and he is just an all-around gentleman of a human being. We've got Anthony Cool Cat Cross in the studio.
Pshaw, get out of town.
What's
You're
up,
too
buddy?
kind, dude. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
This is a long time coming.
Yeah.
I'm so happy that
long-time follower of the show. Long-time fan of the show. It's a great show. Love the show.
Thank you, man.
Love what you've done with the place.
Oh, I love it. Thank
great.
you, man.
This is great.
Yeah.
So what's on your mind? What do you want to,
Well, you dropped some news on me this past week.
Yeah.
You had a very exciting announcement this week pertaining to Zeiser Motors.
Yeah, so we
And I'm saying that correctly?
Zeiser Motors, yeah.
Zeiser, okay.
Yeah, the AI is trippy for some people. But yeah, we announced 2 new models. So we took our original Mark I and we split it basically into 2 separate models, the Silhouette and the Aero. And the Silhouette is more of a big touring bike.
Yeah.
And the Aero is a smaller cafe racer-y kind of bike that's going to be, cheaper and more accessible for people.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
That
yeah.
Aero, I'm really taken by.
I
like those old cafe racers.
Yep, and that was the one that, we did a redesign because we just brought in this really amazing our new director of design. His name's Jordan Renfro, and he's so fucking good. He's like a huge addition to the team, and basically looked at our Mark I and was like, okay, let's do this again.
Okay,
and like the Mark I, the very first bike that we put out, Chris and I basically worked for like a year and a half. It was like a labor of love. It was just him and I. Like we don't have any motorcycling design experience or anything. We don't have a big resume. We're creative and we're designers. He's an engineer. And so we just tried to give it a go. And for, people who have never really done that before, I think it was okay. But it was a labor of love. Now bringing in someone like Jordan who, is a clay modeler. He started off like he went to college for this. He got, roped in by Indian and worked in Indian motorcycles for a good long while, Polaris, and now he works at Navistar, which designs bigger trucks.
Okay.
And so he's an industry veteran. He came in and just, straightened up the lines, still preserved a lot of the original DNA. And then when we decided, okay, we need 2 bikes, that was more of just like a unit economics decision. That there's sort of a lot of people who want a smaller, cheaper bike, and then the touring bike is also still in demand, so trying to capture both of those demos at once sort of really makes sense to us. So and then when we realized that we're sharing so many components across the platform, which is now both of those bikes, it was a no-brainer basically, because we were like, why not? This is super possible. This is not unrealistic. It's not a crazy pie in the sky thing. It's like this is a no-brainer, and we know that Aero is probably gonna like sell a lot in the short term, and then over the long term, as battery tech and everything improves, I think the Silhouette will start to pick up more in numbers. Yeah.
Well, that Aero is so affordable,
right?
Like you guys have priced it in such a way that I'm looking at my budget and I'm like, ooh, how do I get one of those in the driveway?
That's part of the thing. I mean, we're about to experience like a big boom in more affordable bikes that are smaller like that. And I think, we've seen some bikes that have come out recently that are right around the $5,000 to $10,000 price point that are really starting to get better and better. But a lot of them are still lacking features. They're still lacking range. They're still lacking some of these things that we can provide after developing it on the Silhouette.
Okay.
So we can bring that over to that platform as well and play around with it. So we don't know exactly what's going to show up on the Silhouette that's on the Aero, just from a cost perspective, but we're in that was the other part of the announcement the other day, is that we're actually in the prototyping process now. So we've taken the first step into the actual physical prototyping, which is really exciting because we hit our minimum goal on WeFunder, which is the platform we're using to raise money. And so we've hit our minimum goal, and now we're taking a step into the prototyping process, which is that's where the fun starts, because we get to get our hands dirty and we get to start building these things and, starting to test them, run them, and, proving our calculations right, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you have an estimated time or month this year where testing will begin?
I want it to be right around the beginning of next year and or the end of this year. So we're going to probably, at this point, we're sort of beginning what's called a rolling close within our fundraising campaign.
Okay.
So over the next couple of months, we're going to start pulling money out as that money is secured to then build the prototype. So by the end of the month, we'll commence officially on it. We've begun the phase, but we haven't, brought all of the materials in yet. But at the very beginning of next month is when we're going to be, starting to bring in all the materials and starting to build the thing. And then probably, beginning first quarter of next year is when we're really going to start hitting the road with it. Testing it, maybe not the open road, but, tracks and stuff like that. So we're actually already looking at certain tracks on the East Coast and out here and potentially on the West Coast, sunnier climates, things like that, trying to find, because it's going to be winter. So we're going to need some place where we can go for a weekend and really give it, a run through and see what happens with it and see how fast we can break it, and then rebuild it and then break it again.
That's the process, right?
That's basically the process is that, okay, well, we broke it. Now what?
And that's how you learn.
And I mean, I think the thing that separates, one of the things that separates us from other manufacturers who are making smaller, cheaper bikes is that a lot of the times I suspect that there is not a lot of testing that goes into these bikes. And a lot of them are, and we can see, if you look closely at some of these e-bikes and some of these other things, they're off-the-shelf components that have been sort of cobbled together and then are sold in a package that has good marketing.
I see.
And people buy it, and that's okay. But a lot of these things have never really, been tested, in that way, the way that we're proposing to test it. Because if we're going to sell a product, it has to be up to our, ridiculously high standards in my mind. And like, if I'm going to put somebody on it, it has to be safe,
Well, it sounds like this is kind of the impetus for starting this company was that you were dissatisfied with the quality that was represented in the market.
Big time.
So that's really what pushed you guys into the creation. Is that correct?
Yeah,
is that accurate?
And quality is one thing too, and I think really the accessibility of all of the features that we wanted together, right? You could get cheap, but then you didn't get range or speed. You could get range and speed, but it would be ludicrously expensive, And that's still kind of the case right now. Is that there are, as the technology matures slowly, that price is now starting to come down. We're starting to see Zero and Harley and some of the other companies make these bikes cheaper, but it's still a long process that's going to take some time. And we with offering the Silhouette, which is again the bigger bike, we're pretty competitive compared to a Damon or a Harley or whatever that still is in the sometimes high 30s price bracket. But with the Aero, that's trying to be a little bit more competitive with the smaller models. With still enough range, with still enough speed. But it has more functionality. More features, more things like that. You know? But yeah, that was totally the impetus. That was totally the impetus.
Do you see a top competitor right now? Like who you are? Is there anyone in your that you're kind of looking at, modeling next to, and saying we need to exceed what they're doing?
Well, I would probably be remiss without mentioning Zero motorcycles. They are like the granddaddy. They've been around since ridiculously early, I think, like 2008 or something like that. I forget when they started, but they have really blazed the trail, because if you started this in 2008, it was not easy to convince people that this was the future. People were still like, "Nuh-uh, this is not happening. There's no way you can do this with a motorcycle, blah, blah, blah." But now, because of their work and because of them sticking it out, it's people like us that benefit from it. So I look at them as competition, but not really. I look at them as more of like a great other company that's here, that's in this country, that's doing good things. There's always questionable competition on the cheaper end of things, because it's very, very easy to make cheap things. But, I think deep down people do want quality. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to something like an actual motorcycle, once you get to a certain point where there's speed and range involved, people aren't just going to settle for like, oh, this doesn't feel very tested. This doesn't feel very cohesive. This feels like 20 components individually.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of strapped to them going down the road.
Uh-huh.
Harley is definitely putting up a fight.
Okay.
I think I have my own issues with Harley, to be honest, and we could talk a lot about that.
Okay.
Which we might, but they spun off recently their electric division called Livewire.
Mm-hmm.
Because they had the bike named Livewire, and then they spun off their electric division.
Okay.
And the bike that they're putting out now is better and cheaper than a lot of other people. So like that could become potentially, something that's like, ooh, good, something to compete to and to sort of, form some kind of like benchmark there.
Uh-huh.
I think some of the other major manufacturers are going to get into this sooner rather than later. I think they're waiting for cats like us, Zero, and Livewire to sort of show them what path they need to take.
Okay.
Right? Because like if we can succeed, then somebody like Indian or whatever is going to come in and basically be like, all right, this is what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll sort of peg their models to ours.
Yeah.
Same with Zero, same with Harley.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like BMW right now just announced a line of small electric scooters and almost like e-bikes.
Ooh, okay.
And so they're looking into this as well. So it's just a matter of time before
everyone moves in that direction.
Well, combustion's going to be gone by 2035, so it's pointless.
When I did my research, as shallow as it was,
Probably
Zero.
Wasn't. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I wanted to be prepared to talk to you about this because you dropped this news on me, and I had no idea you were going in this direction.
I know,
and I think
it's such a left turn.
It's so exciting, man. And to be honest, if I thought you were going to go into any kind of industry,
right?
I hope that you take this as a compliment.
Sure.
I thought it was maybe like a fashion line,
sure,
or something.
Sure.
Like you're a very
I do
stylish
take this as
guy.
A compliment. Yeah, thank you.
Like I could have seen you like come out with a line of designer suits and
still not out
suits
of the
and
question.
boots. And,
actually, there's oh man, that actually brings up a really good because some of the suits that I've worn in the past, some of those jackets that I have.
Sharp.
There's this one blue jacket that I have that I found in a thrift store and it was made in Colorado and it's the weirdest cut I've ever seen. And I've taken it to tailors. I've taken it to people overseas in Europe. And everybody sees this thing and they're like, what the hell is that? And it was made in Colorado.
Wow.
Locally made.
Okay.
It's a weird cut. It has like an extra piece of fabric here. And my thought was always like, okay, I'm going to give this to somebody. They can take it apart and then make a copy of that and we'll run it as like a suit line. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And like we'll do the fashion line. That was always like sort of secret back end project that I was considering doing. Maybe make it out of like hemp or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like high quality suits from like a cool organic fiber or something like that.
Okay.
Super cool. So.
Have you done that yet, or is that
no.
That will happen someday, or
it's a hope. It's like almost everything you want to do. It requires a shitload of capital.
Oh, sure.
So
totally.
That's always the problem. Is that it's like I would love to do this, but okay, it needs like $20,000 to get
It's great
started,
to be a dream weaver.
Totally.
It's awesome to come up with these concepts, but you also have to have capital behind you to make these things happen.
That's basically it.
So that was a little aside compliment.
Sure. Sorry. Yeah,
I wanted to just pay credit where credit's due.
Thank
very
you.
Very stylish, fashionable guy. Well, I shouldn't say fashionable. You're stylish.
Thank
you. I think I see them as fashion. That comes with the season. I don't give a shit about fashion.
Right. And that goes with the trends, right?
I like somebody who just owns a style, and you've got that.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that. Right.
In the research, Zero was the company that really stood out to me, and I was very impressed with the number of models that they have.
Yeah, they have a really good platform, right?
Yeah.
So they've developed one or two motors that are, and they're mid-drive, we're hub-drive, right? So that's like the big difference between us.
Okay.
The motors that they developed are great. The bikes that they're building are great. They've got a lot of really amazing talent on board. They're doing great things. There's really, you can't beat around the bush. Like I absolutely look up to them. You know what I mean? And I see what they've done. I've talked to people who have invested in them really early on. And, they're doing good things. They're going a different direction in a lot of ways than we are, but that's okay because they just recently partnered with Polaris. They're doing more outdoorsy, adventure stuff on that end. And then some of their street bikes are really more like street bikes.
Yeah.
They're more like electric ninjas,
Yes.
Kawasaki Ninjas. They're more like the electric version of that.
Yeah.
Whereas we're doing like big tourers and then cafe racers. So those are almost different segments completely, and almost different design language as well. So
that that Arrow. I mean, to have an electric cafe racer.
Yeah.
That just
with just a shitload of torque, and then on top of that, also twin hub is what we're thinking right now. So
I was watching some video that was giving I was hearing the sound of these bikes.
That's
as
this
they
is
take
a
off.
whole philosophy that you can get into actually, because sound. Everybody thinks they're going to be quiet. They're not going to be quiet. They can't be quiet. It's a safety issue.
Yeah,
you can't make a silent bike. Like you just can't. That's
it's a major issue,
a huge issue, because you need the noise is necessary for other people to hear you.
Ooh.
And
what about the military? Military has silent bikes.
I mean, good Lord, a sneaky bikes, stealth bikes.
I just want to write it into a movie.
I know, that would be fun, wouldn't it? Well, maybe. So really,
go on with the sound.
With gas, with combustion, the thing about it is you generate the sound through the engine, all that shit. But with electric, you have to sort of generate the sound through a couple of other means, right? So you have the motors that will make some sound, but they probably won't be as loud as you want them to be. So then there's cooling systems, and there's aerodynamics, and there's all kinds of other things you can bend to your will to create the sound that you need it to. So that's essentially what we get to experiment with in the prototyping process, is actually dialing in exactly what the sound is going to sound like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's really the bread and butter. Is like I've always liked you. That's a huge part of motorcycling.
Sure.
My BMW R50.
Sounds
a specific way, because it is a 1972. It's a flat two boxer engine, so it's got the pistons that stick out on the sides.
Gotcha.
And there is nothing that sounds like it. Do you know what I mean? Like there's nothing that sounds like it, and if you're that kind of guy,
if you're a bike guy,
you know what that sounds like. You know what a Harley sounds like.
Someone could just play you an audio recording, and you would be able to say,
oh yeah, because it's just this very balanced, specific sounds. The same with a Harley. Like I know, and I know a lot of people know exactly what a Harley sounds like. Harley they tried to trademark and patent the sound of their bikes.
Yeah.
And I don't think they won that battle, but they were really trying to, because the engine's inherently imbalanced.
Okay.
Because it's a twin, but it doesn't actually fire on all cylinders. It has like a weird imbalance.
Okay.
And it creates a pa-ta-ta kind of rhythm to it, as opposed to a flat, twin that is very balanced and is just straight across the board.
Oh, cool.
So there's all these little subtleties in there, and we get to manipulate our bike to fit the exact characteristics that we want, which is super fun.
I'm curious about the origin of interest for bikes. The love, like did it come from like a certain film? Was it watching Steve McQueen in The Great Escape, or was it?
I wish it was
Tom Cruise in Top Gun.
You know what it was? It was for motorcycling. Well, for really mechanical stuff in general. My dad was kind of a car guy, but he never worked on cars when I was young.
Yeah.
I just was always very interested in the aesthetics of cars.
Yeah.
They're around you all the time. When you're growing up, you're out, you see them. And then you start to get into reading about older cars, and you start to read about the designs of, cars from before when I was young.
Yeah.
And you see these things, and they're beautiful. And I had some friends in high school and, a little bit beyond that, who actually started working on these like mopeds, like vintage European mopeds. So I got really into that. That was like my first foray into mechanical stuff, is working on old two-stroke French mopeds.
Wow, okay.
And so like Motobecane, 50Vs, some Peugeots were in the mix there. And those are really cool. This is really pedantic, but they're variated, which was like the first implementation of like a variated transmission. So the engine actually moved because a belt would retract. It's like two gears in one. It's really, really cool stuff.
Okay.
But again, we won't get into.
Was that exclusive to European bikes?
No, there was multiple. Honda did a variated bike too, but like I think Motobecane was like one of the first. I forget who was the first, but they were doing it for a very long time, and I always was like fascinated with that tech. You get a lot of power out of it, and the way that it worked through centrifugal force, like these belts and everything. So that kind of sparked a lot of interest getting into that sort of thing. And then got into classic cars, particularly old American V8s.
Nice.
For a while there, had a I still do 1966 Chrysler Imperial, which is huge. Yeah, you've
I've
seen
that car,
You've
dude.
seen that car.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah, that car is cool. And that thing, that V8, I have worked a lot on. So got very familiar with V8s, got very familiar with old American big cars, and then got into Volkswagens.
Okay.
So then got a 68 Beetle, worked on those, did that thing, air cooled, whole different ballpark with that. And then I was, the origins of the company, I was sick, and I was like, man, I want to ride a 2-wheel thing again.
Yeah.
Couldn't find one that was electric that was cool. Decided to make one. Now, recently, I got this BMW that I'm absolutely in love with.
Yeah.
And like I'm now, I guess, officially like a Beamer guy for now.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Until we produce our bike. But I look at some of those old BMWs as like such a beautiful works of art. Yeah. Honestly. They're so pretty. Some of them are just gorgeous. And actually the new BMWs that are coming out are just, oh my God. The R18 is like, I walked into a Cycle Gear in Denver, and they have one sitting there. And I was like, just kind of struck by it because it's such a striking bike. It's big, it's long, it's old looking, it's black with the chrome and everything. And the guy was like, oh, you can sit on it if you want. I was like, okay. And I did. And it felt just so like connected to you. It was
Doesn't it almost feel like when you see those things that there should be a bench sitting in front of it, like at at an art museum, where you could just sit and appreciate this beautiful piece of art. Now, what you talking about old cars, old bikes that really had an artistic flair, where you were like, oh my God, this is somebody's vision come to life, and it's a functional piece of art. I think you guys have captured that with the silhouette and the arrow.
Thank you.
Really, like visiting the website and seeing these designs. Now, these other companies, they've got a couple of good designs. I think Zero, like you said, is leading the charge. Beautiful designers who are working for them. But I can absolutely see the talent on your team, and I can read about it in their bios. It's very impressive.
The team is just with Zeiser is like the heart and soul of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm heading it up, and I'm the guy, the cheerleader here, who's like helping it get going. But I mean, the prowess really comes from Jordan and Hunter and like some of these other cats who are on the team. And Chris, obviously too. Co-founder. He's oldest friend. He's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And that team, I definitely don't ever want to be a co-founder or a founder, co-founder who is like, all of this was me. It was totally me. There's nobody behind me. Nothing at all. It was all me.
Are you gonna walk out on stage with a black turtleneck and no belt and a pair of New Balance?
I know. I'm so glad you're picking up on who I'm talking about. Because that's the thing, is that a lot of these startups like this, and a lot of these tech companies too. You look at any of these founders, it's like they did this shit with a team of people, and it works better in the narrative that they're the Superman of the thing and know everything. Yeah. And I can hold my own in all of the discussions that are going on within the team. And I think that is what I like about the position that I'm in, is that if I'm talking to the marketing department or the engineering department or the, et cetera, I can hold my own. I can understand what we're talking about, and I can put things together. But am I the one that's single-handedly innovating on behalf of the company and the world and the plant? No, of course not, because it's a fucking team. It's a team fucking effort, guys, And so that to me has always been the proudest thing about Zeiser, is that the team works very, very well together. And we haven't even been all in the same room ever.
Wow.
You know this? I don't know if nobody
No,
really
no,
you
didn't tell me this.
I didn't know this. I haven't been in the same room as Chris, in the same physical room, in 7 years.
Wow.
We haven't seen each other other than Zoom and obviously talking every day.
It's the power of technology. Oh, for sure.
That's the thing, is that my dad is an entrepreneur.
Okay.
And he's had a couple of ventures, but a lot of them, he was missing the internet. The fact of the matter is that, okay, a lot of the people on the team right now are kind of connections of connections. Hunter was Chris's friend, Adrian's my friend. We've kind of done that. But Jordan came to us on the internet. I was looking for a designer. I was like, we need to get somebody who's like a designer, a veteran designer. And I was kind of looking around, and all of a sudden, I was like doing general searches of people who were at their jobs and might be looking for a change or might be interested in something like this. and he saw that I looked at his profile.
Yeah.
He sent me a message, and we started talking, and it instantly gelled. He was just so on the level with Chris and I both. It was like a natural fit.
Cool.
And he's out in the Midwest, but we found him on LinkedIn. You know what I mean? Like that's such a huge, amazing tool for founders or startups in general that didn't exist 20 years ago, 10 years ago, you know, basically. It's crazy.
Yeah. The power of networking now is insurmountably more than it was 10, 15 years ago.
Huge. Huge. So, yeah, I mean, you know, it's down to that, and it's down to the fact that we have the tech to actually be able to put together, I think, potentially the best team for the job. You know what I mean?
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What was your first bike that you ever bought?
Counting mopeds or motorcycles?
Let's do both.
So
you got a moped first?
Moped first.
Okay.
That would have been the first one that I bought was a 1978 Motorbicane 50V. And we pulled it out of a barn in West Virginia, and I paid $125 for it.
Wow.
And some people who know this sort of thing are like, holy shit, that's so cheap, because now they go for like $1,000.
Okay.
But I pulled it out of a barn in West Virginia. We drove it back to Pennsylvania. We fixed it up that night, did a couple of little things, got it running, and took it out, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And then after that, I went through a couple of other ones. The first motorcycle, technically, that I've bought is this Beamer, actually, because I've only borrowed and, well, the first one that's running that actually works, I guess, is the other thing that actually works well.
Yeah.
And I count as the Beamer. I've had a couple of other project bikes that have sort of worked a little bit, and then they sit around and they don't do anything, and then I sell them. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, that's not really a bike that I've owned, you know?
Okay.
The Beamer is like the first bike that I've really enjoyed that was actually mine. Other than that, it's like a CB 500 or something that I've ridden around a little bit, who is a friend of mine's or whatever, you know, little bikes here and there. But I'm a huge fan of the CB 500 line, or the CB line just in general from Honda. Those are great bikes, you know, the older ones. They're fantastic. But yeah, the R50/5 is like the bike that I guess is like my first bike that I've owned that works really well, that is reliable, that is one that I can actually enjoy.
Cool.
If that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
My first bike, only bike, was a Honda Interceptor 1985.
Ooh, okay. I think I know which one. Is that the sportier one?
It's real sporty. It's a street bike for sure.
Yeah.
And so the guy who sold it to me, he gave the best sales pitch he could have. He didn't know me. He didn't know anything about me. But he said the thing, and it was a decent bike. But he said the thing that really it like clinched the deal. And he said, "This is the exact bike that Maverick drives in Top Gun." And I was like, sold.
So I want that. Yeah.
Which
I want that.
was a lie, because Maverick's on a Kawasaki Ninja.
That's so true.
But you put the 85 Ninja against the Interceptor, they really are identical. The fairing is exactly the same. The seat is the same. There's a little handle on the back of the seat. It's identical. And I really did love that bike. It was a 550. It was it was good fun.
That's a perfect size too. I mean, I am very partial to the sort of mid-range size bikes, like the 500s. Yeah. 500, 600 range. I think for me personally, like over 1,000, I'm just not there yet. I don't have the need to go on the highway, because the highway is scary as shit. And I'm like, I'm good. I don't need that big of a power. Like 500 cc's, perfect. Give me that.
How do you like to ride? Like, are you surface streets and then like up in the canyons or something? Or
if I can get into the canyons, so I live in Denver now. I live in sort of like North Denver, South Westminster kind of border town area. And luckily there's like one really amazing road that goes through a valley up past Regis University and drops me right in the Highlands, called Lowell. And it just takes me right in there, and I can hop on the bike and be in downtown basically in like, 10 minutes.
I used to live at like 29 in Lowell.
Oh, so
I know that
that's the intersection that I take. I go Lowell 29th, and then 29th to 15th, and then 15th into downtown.
How cool, man.
Yeah, and if you go up Lowell north, there's that big castle on the hill.
Yeah.
I live just south of that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that
cool neighborhoods,
that area,
man.
Yeah, the hill, right on the hill. And
I bet it's changed so much, because truly I lived there about 15 years ago. It's kind of
that's right where I take Lowell to 29th. If I want to go in town on the bike. And I mean, I like city driving to an extent. I don't like it when it's busy. I'm very much so like, I do not want to be inconvenienced when I'm on the bike.
Yeah.
And when I mean inconvenienced, I don't even mean like stuck in traffic or anything. I mean like I want to have the least amount of potential problems as possible.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'll go out late at night. You know,
Cool.
if I drive down into downtown, it's probably like on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Okay.
When it's dead.
Yeah.
And then I'll leave late, you know what I mean? And kind of like, I don't want to go down 14th Street when it's like middle of the day traffic or anything.
No.
Like that shit's dangerous.
Yeah.
There's like some moped people down there will go on rides like on a Wednesday night. It's kind of quiet. It's
Okay.
nice, it's easy.
Nice.
You know, and then if I can get up into the canyons, which is kind of difficult from Denver without taking the highway.
Yeah.
You
You're
have
right.
to kind of go
That's a good point.
north and up and then around and stuff. But if you can do it, if I can do it, the bike, actually, I bought the bike in Fort Collins and drove it all the way down in one day.
Okay.
And I took all the back roads that I could, like up into the canyon, Masonville, Carter Lake, down to Hygiene, up and around. Stuff.
Yeah.
And it was glorious, but I hadn't ridden a bike in like 10 years, so I was pretty sore.
This is actually refreshing to hear you say that, because
sure.
I thought I didn't have enough grit to hang with highway driving. Like I thought that was a rite of passage. And when I bought my bike in Denver, I actually lived in Capitol Hill, and I worked in Stapleton, and I would get on the highway for a stretch because it was the fastest way. So it was my daily commuter.
Sure.
And so I was in like rush hour traffic, scared out of my wits.
Yeah.
And then after doing that for a couple of years, I sold the bike because I was like, this is way too dangerous. I'm going to die in somebody's blind spot.
I trust myself.
Yeah.
I trust my bike to an extent. My bike is on the smaller side. It's 500 cc's. It's not quite big enough to handle I-70, I feel like. Or really I-25. Like I-70 is basically just standstill traffic any time of day. So it can handle that. But it can't.
Yeah.
I don't think it could really handle I-25.
Uh-huh.
Just because I have seen it so many times getting cut off. Even just on my way up, you know? I mean, it's just impossible.
Yeah.
And I would do it in the middle of the night, maybe, but not even. Because then people are going at 200 miles an hour and not looking at anything or not paying attention if there's, you know, lights ahead of them or anything. So it's kind of a damned if you will, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
I feel like if I had a bigger bike, if I had a new R18, which is an 1800cc bike, I'd feel a lot more comfortable going on the highway.
Okay.
Because, and that was kind of it kind of dovetails back to our philosophy, right?
Yeah.
The reason why the Silhouette has a top speed of 120 is because you need it for safety. If it's a touring bike, it's going to go on the highway. People are going to drive it on the highway. And if you're going to drive it on the highway, you need speed to get out of the way. You can't build a bike that's top speed is like 100, right? Because everybody on the highway is going 90.
Yeah.
And if you want to keep up, you're at the top of your like power band, basically. You're almost giving all the bike can give all the time.
Yeah.
So really what you need to do is widen the scope and say, okay, if this bike is on the highway, it's probably going to be going 80 to 90 miles most of the time. So it needs to have a top speed of 120, because if that bike needs to get out of the way of something, it has to have more power to give.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't have more to give, then you're screwed and you're stuck and you're going to die, basically. And so, like, it's kind of a safety feature is the way that I argue for it, is that it's like you need that power to be able to get out of the way of danger and to have the flexibility, because, you know, if you don't, then you're screwed.
I did not think of it that way. And I appreciate that perspective.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't take my R50 on the highway. Its top speed is like 90.
Yeah.
So like if I was taking it on I-25, I would be outpaced by most cars. I would be sitting there with it revving full throttle, fourth gear, almost at the red line, just the entire way.
Just to keep up.
Just to keep up.
Yeah.
Which just doesn't make any sense. It's not a highway bike. And it's also sort of the stance isn't right, the posture isn't right. Nothing about it is for highway stuff, you know, for touring. But again, like the Silhouette is being built with that in mind. Essentially with the more relaxed driving position and, you know, more speed, more range, et cetera, et cetera. You need that if you're going to do that. And maybe, I mean, again, I would feel a little more comfortable going on the highway if I had a bigger bike. It's more visible, louder, it's faster, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Then I would be like, okay, yeah, we'll try it,
Yeah.
But even then, I'm still like nervous of other people. I just don't trust other people.
It's the best way to be. Like
Yeah.
you should be,
Yeah, I mean, if
cautious to a fault.
and the other thing is that trying to use a motorcycle to necessarily replace, like if you have a big commute or something like that, like if you need to regularly go from Fort Collins to Denver,
Yeah.
or LA to San Francisco or whatever it is, like
Yeah.
you're driving regularly on highways. Nah, it would be. I would be shocked if you could use a motorcycle to replace a car. You know what I mean?
Well, you were talking about the fatigue
Yeah.
that you felt at the end of the day going from Fort Collins to Denver, given on the back roads.
Yeah.
But that's something. Fatigue on a bike is so much different than in a car,
Yeah.
where you're basically reclined in a. You're basically like in your living room with a steering wheel in front of you.
Right.
Like you're comfortable.
You have AC.
Like it. Yeah. You got AC.
You got AC. You got radio.
You're not using any of your stabilizer muscles.
Not even a little bit. I mean, 300-mile range. Most people, and our director of design has said this. We've all talked about this. Is that it's like the range figure is sure, it's impressive. Do I think that people are going to consistently do 300 miles and then stop, charge up, do another 300 miles in the same day? I don't know about that, but what I do know is that most bikes, their comfortability, like after about 200 and 250 miles, you're broken basically. Just in general, it's like it's an amazing bike seat construction, from the ground up to build a bike seat that you can get off after 250, 300 miles and be like, I feel fine. You know what I mean? Like most people, I think, they'll say they'll be fine, but most people, I think, when they get off of one of those after 250, 300 miles, they're going to be like, I need to not sit on this thing for a little bit before I get back on it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If they're going to be a little sore, they're going to be a little achy. And like that would be something that we could try and, sort of tackle in that way, is like try and make something that's actually as comfortable as it possibly can be, so that you can fulfill that range requirement. But,
well, I'm an avid cyclist, and I'll do 30, 40 miles on my bike, and I'll get off and I'm sore for days.
Yeah.
But I'm also a skinny mini, and I don't have a lot of cushion back there.
I know,
so.
me neither. It's just all bones. It's a big sack of bones back there. There's nothing there. Yeah.
When you're talking about how you like to ride, it's reminding me of. I grew up. We had a lake house on Lake Michigan,
Sure,
and it was a tiny little town called Glen, Michigan. One blinking stoplight on a frontage road highway.
Yeah.
I don't know, population. I don't know, 180 people or something like that. Tiny little sleepy getaway town.
Sure.
And there was this old man, and he'd ride up to that blinking light from his lakeshore little house and get the newspaper and get a coffee and talk to everybody.
Right.
But he's on this little dirt bike. He had this little dirt bike, and I just thought, man, that's the way I want to ride. Like being on the highway, touring, stuff like that. I think it's cool, but I've always been like, I don't think it's for me.
Right. I mean,
I like the small town kind of thing.
There's something about like, I do want to do this at some point, is like when the Silhouette comes out, I would love to do like a big motorcycle trip. You put a tent on the back, and you go out, and that's not necessarily highway riding at that point. You're just doing, interstate.
Well, that's a good point.
And you're going in the back, but you're going miles. You're putting down miles, and you're going to cool places.
Scenic.
Right, exactly.
We're not trying to get A to B quickest.
And that was the one thing that I laugh at a lot of these new electric motorcycle CEOs that are out there.
Yeah.
They want to like pretend like they're making the next generation of easy rider bikes.
Okay.
And they miss the point of like Easy Rider. The point of Easy Rider in a lot of ways. Like if you watch that movie again, I don't know when the last time you've watched that movie was.
I know it very well.
Right.
I wrote a paper on it in film school.
Did you?
Like, yeah.
Okay. So
It's been a while, but I know it well.
You know it pretty well. So what I got out of it, I mean, I watched it, I think, when I was really young at some point.
Yeah.
Half watched it. Now, I watched it recently again because another motorcycle brand used it in their marketing material to market their electric motorcycle. And I was like, I don't know if this is right. This seems a little weird, like that they're doing this. So I was like, I need to watch this movie again. And I did. And one of the things I noticed that I thought was really cool is that, yeah, it's certainly about their sort of like aimless trip that they're going on and they pick up people and meet people and stuff. But it really, when you look at the way that the shots are constructed, it's about the scenery.
It is.
And shit that they're in. They're out exploring.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what struck me about that. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, look at how cool these guys are on a motorcycle. It's about going out into nature and exploring.
Holy shit, they're in Monument Valley, Utah. Like,
yeah, or they're in some big hill country in California or something, and the vistas are amazing.
Yeah.
And they're not on a highway necessarily. They're not just on I-20. Like, how boring would that be if they were like, all right, Easy Rider, let's go on I-25.
They're just
like
in traffic.
Boo. Like, that's awful. Like, oh, cool. I'm in the construction zone in Loveland again, you know?
Can you imagine them in traffic and then the soundtrack is the same and it's just like, take a load off Annie.
Or that,
take a load for free.
Oh, my God. That would be so sad.
And they're just like in stop and go.
That would be so sad. So, like, to me, it's, you know, that's really what the Silhouette could be about. That's really what all of this should be about, is like, fuck using it as just a plain, you know, straight up commuter bike or whatever. But really, what I look at its potential for is really giving people the opportunity to go out and explore again. And actually use the bike as a bike in that way, you know?
Is that what you guys are talking about when you say we're creating an electric bike with soul?
Yes.
Is that what it's about? It's getting back to the soul of riding.
I think so too.
The spirit of riding.
Well, because there's a you know, there's a big threat that, you know, and this kind of comes out of what we were looking at when we first started the thing, is that we were looking around at every other electric motorcycle that was out there, and none of them really had soul. None of them really had like a passion to them, or you know, I look at any of them really, and I don't see something that I'm like, ooh, yes, I want to take that thing on a very long road trip and bond with it. I want to have feelings about it. Like the Beamer that I have. I have feelings about it. Yeah. I sometimes will, you know, be doing garden work and late at night or whatever, and be outside reading, and before I go to bed, I go and look at it. You know what I mean? Like you form this kind of like emotional attachment to it. And I get that. I look at some of these others, and I've kind of ridden them and stuff, and I've never really formed an emotional attachment with one of them. You know what I mean? I don't feel like I can bond with it. So I want to build a bike that people can bond with. Yeah. They feel something with. And they're starting on the Aero. They can start on the Aero and feel an attachment with it, and then maybe move to the Silhouette if they want to go up a model size. But they need to bond with it. They need to feel something about it. Yeah. And that's really what it's about. And then it's the, you know, the outward side of it is maybe the exploration of the country or whatever, you know. Yeah. But I can't tell people how to ride in that way. You know what I mean? Like if somebody wants to use it as a commuter bike, we want to make sure that that is also going to be accounted for in that way. That the bike will be able to do that as well. Yeah. Right? But like the way that I look at it as just a brilliant tool to either, with the Aero, you can explore the cities because you'll have the range that you want to. You can zoom around to different, like imagine in Denver or like any other big city that you've been to, just bopping around different neighborhoods on the Aero and just boop, boop, park it, easy, done. With the Silhouette, it's just exploring a sort of a bigger version of that, you know. So.
And the design came out of one bike, and you kind of split it. Yeah, that's really cool.
Because when we did it, we realized that we were trying to, how do I put this nicely? We were trying to sort of cram a lot into that bike. Okay. It was supposed to sort of be. We were just very optimistic about what
like
it was
the bike was almost wearing too many hats.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, if you look at the original renderings, you can still find them somewhere. I'm sure I've taken them all down on our end, but they're out there in old press pieces that we've gotten. Okay. And I still don't mind it. I just look at the new stuff now and I'm like, oh my God, this is so much better. This was the right choice. We hired the right people. This is great. Yeah. But I look at the old one and I'm like, man, yeah, it has elements of a cruiser and then elements of a cafe racer. And all of those elements individually are great. Yeah. But together, they're kind of confusing. Right? Yeah. People don't really know what to make of it. Some people really like it. Some people really hate it. It was very polarizing when it came out. Yeah. When we put the press release out, everybody was like, what the fuck is this thing? You know, and some people were like, I fucking want one right now. Some people were like, that's hideous. You know, it was very polarizing right out of the gate. Yeah. But I think with this is more, again, it was designed by somebody who understands the motorcycling industry. So it's a little bit more bikey. It's a little bit more logical. Yeah. And on top of that, it fits the categories a little bit more, the established iconography that exists. Nice. Right. And that's a little bit more important to us as opposed to just being like, here's a bike. We don't know what it's for, but it's a bike. You know what I mean? We definitely don't want to come off like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
to piggyback on the story of this old man who would drive up to the
your guy.
So
with
I have a print, and I don't think I don't think we even walked past as we came into the studio, but it's a print of Robert Redford on a motorcycle.
Ooh, what
and
motorcycle is it?
so it's we got to look at it together. It's a dirt bike, but it's a I think it's a Kawasaki.
Probably. I mean, a lot of them were that era.
And this is I think it's circa 1980, 81, something like that. Probably a late 70s bike. And it's a young, beautiful Redford, but it's at the Sundance Resort. So to give like a little bit of my background, having worked for Robert Redford for Sundance, and this is him at his golden era. Like this, that's why I have this. It's hung up in my house.
Yep.
But when I worked with the Sundance Institute and worked alongside Bob, he would still ride his bike down from his beautiful estate at the Sundance Resort. So we lived in a box canyon. All operations happened in a box canyon. If you were there for a purpose. There's no highway passing through the Sundance Resort. Everyone's there to be a part of this experience. So that makes it special in that
That's amazing.
In that sense. But he every day would ride this bike down to the base camp, basically, and park, and he never, ever wore a helmet. Like, I never saw him wear a helmet, but he's old school.
Yeah.
But he wore a bandana. So he had a bandana on, and it was so funny.
What a guy.
Yeah. He'd roll up to basically his private parking spot, and he'd get off his bike. But the funniest thing is he would take off the headband and hang it on the handlebars as if it were a helmet.
That's how did I know?
And I was just like, God damn, this guy's so cool. I mean, not too safe, but so goddamn cool.
I mean, that's the thing is that though he was doing like backcountry stuff, right? Like
we were on the tiniest little mountain neighborhood roads.
Probably didn't even. It was probably a dead end.
If he got over 35,
it would be surprising.
It would be surprising. So
that is more understandable.
Yeah.
When there's no sneak attacks from cars. And the only thing you really have to worry about is sneak attacks from animals. But again, if you're not going very fast, you're on canyon roads, and you're not
in daylight.
I mean, I've noticed that I'm a speed. I like speed. Speed is good. Speed is good. Speed is good. But I also don't mind going slow if the moment's nice, right?
Yeah.
Like if it's a really beautiful drive, I do not mind going like 35 miles an hour because I can stop. I don't need to gun it around corners. I can kind of look around and be like, look at the nature that I am in. I am participating with by being in the nature on the bike. You know what I mean? Like that to me is a little bit more important. But that's just me. That's just sort of an aesthetic thing. But.
Well, I found somebody I can't remember who told me this, but the distinction between speed and acceleration.
Right.
But they were like, I like acceleration. Speed, take it or leave it.
Right.
And I found that too. When I was going really fast on my bike, well, and really just being on the highway felt too fast on my bike. Right. And now you telling me about top speed and everything, my top speed was pretty low on my Intercept. Well, I don't know. I never got it to top speed.
It probably was 100. I mean, it was a 650.
Probably.
Right? I mean, it was probably
550.
Oh, it was 5. Yeah,
it's 550. Okay. I just remember I had a good jump off the line.
Oh, I'm sure. Zippy.
Well, as I was learning to ride the bike, I was lifting that that front
that
wheel
would come up a little.
Yeah.
I have a friend who rides a Ducati and has the same.
Hang
problems.
on, we're gonna pause.
You have some issues.
Oh man.
We were talking about speed.
Okay, well let's get back into it. We're talking about speed versus acceleration.
Speed versus acceleration.
And I found when I was riding, riding at 80, keeping pace with the cars and traffic around me.
Yeah.
There was nothing exhilarating about going 80. Now,
relative speed. Relative speed's always a killer because you're always just gonna be like behind a Chevy.
I still like acceleration. Like I drive a little lunchbox. It's a Honda Element, but I like the feeling of getting from 0 to 45, and then I hit the cruise control. Now I'm at 45.
I've always said
Yeah.
that you get a small car with a lot of acceleration that's rear-wheel drive.
Yeah.
Skinny tires.
Ooh.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Even and that's why I love the Beetle. You know, I've
Yeah.
driven big cars, I've driven fast cars, I've driven Mustangs, and I remember it. So,
tell me about Mustangs. I'm a little bit of a Mustang nerd.
Okay, I'll tell you one thing. So I'll tell
a little
you these
bit.
two things. Yeah. No, these are two experiences that are interesting. So I love the Beetle because you can throw it around a corner at 25 and have the rear end out and be, you know, like you're sliding it around a corner, but you're only going 25. You know, a pedestrian could be like, and he's around. You know what I mean?
And
it's so slow.
Yeah.
But you're having so much fun with it, and you want to it's a fun car.
And you feel the road
right,
as you're doing it.
And there's no power, really. I mean, it's like, 50 horsepower or something like that? It's like a tiny engine, 1,600 cc's. There are bikes, that R18 has a bigger engine than that Beetle engine. You know what I mean? Like, think about that.
Wow.
So, like, you know, okay, that's fun as shit. My landlord in Fort Collins actually had a, Gen 1 Mustang. In perfect shape, restored it, white, etc. It was a lovely car, and it looked lovely. The Mustang is a looker, right?
Oh yeah,
it looks like a fast, cool car. And one day he was like, "You should drive it," and I hop in. Absolutely, the most insanely strange and almost awful thing to drive in some ways. For one, it's the anticipation, right? You're built. I've never driven a Mustang before, so I'm like getting ready to drive, and like I like go and sit in it. I'm like, oh wow, I'm in a Mustang. Oh boy, this is going to be very fast. This is going to be very powered, fast, and smooth. And as it turns out, it's not at all. The clutch is so heavy and positioned in a weird angle where you can't actually put your heel on the ground. You have to use your entire leg. And so you really have no metric for the distance, and then your knee starts to hurt almost immediately because the clutch is so heavy.
Oh, wow. And
then on your right foot, you have a thermonuclear weapon, basically, ready to explode. If you even look at the gas pedal, that thing will rev to, and it wants to go. So if you don't drive it like you're racing, you're screwed.
Okay.
You will just jump around corners and be constantly in the shit. You have to drive it like you want to. You're racing all the time. So to me, I mean, when you're on a track, that's great. When you're in downtown Fort Collins, is it really great? No. Like when you're in downtown, when you're in a downtown place, you're in traffic, do you really want that heavy of a clutch pedal? No.
Yeah.
If you're on a track, that's the perfect place to drive a car like that. It's the same with when we're talking about acceleration. We're talking about, acceleration versus speed. The Mustang's a fast car. I think acceleration, though, best on a track. You can really experience the full range of emotions of a car like that on a track, on a closed circuit, on a mountain road or something like that, where you can really go fast. Nice. You can drive it like it's intended to be driven. Really give it the beans.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, as an around town kind of car, horrible.
Okay.
It is the worst. It seriously was like, this sucks. I took it around the block 3 times and I got out and I was like, I am so disappointed. I thought it was going to be so different. I had my hopes so high and got out of there with a very, very sore left knee. And, probably peed my pants because I was like, the acceleration, just like a stare at the gas pedal. It really wants to, it's crazy.
Well, you made a good point about the look of the vehicle.
Right. It was styled,
I mean, it's such a beautiful look, like that era, like the era of 65 to 70 with Mustang, or even 69 cars. They're so beautiful to look at. They kind of shit the bed through the 70s and 80s, and they turn into kind of I don't know, little bit of caricatures of themselves.
Well, and the suspension, and I mean the emission standards that came in really killed the muscle car in general and everything. I mean, I also think too. You watch that movie Ford versus Ferrari, by the way?
I have not seen it.
You gotta watch it.
I've heard great things, and I know the story of
Shelby and Ken Miles and all these people. Well, there's like a very specific scene that you'll enjoy as a Mustang guy, and where it's like a 2-second critique of the Mustang.
Okay.
It makes a really good point. It was like at the Mustang launch, and he says a couple of things. So I won't spoil it for you, but basically it's a car on a chassis, primitive kind of suspension.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily made to be a fine-tuned racing machine, but it's supposed to look like one. It's supposed to give off that appearance of like, this is your racing. But of course, it's a consumer car. No one's gonna fucking race a Mustang,
Yeah.
unless it's finely tuned and they've changed the suspension and they've changed all of these other things that make it, more for racing.
Okay.
It was just marketed that way,
Yeah.
It was marketed as a fast car. It was marketed as a racy kind of car. It's not really like in its Gen 1. Later on, they did things to it, but Gen 1, not really a race car. Like,
Okay.
it's more like a consumer car.
Okay.
They marketed towards that demo because everybody wants to feel like, a racing driver, basically.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of the weird thing about this, is the way that you can use those concepts of speed and acceleration in that way to trick people into buying your product, which I definitely also don't want to do.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And this is certainly disappointing news to hear, but not
Sorry, Varun.
not surprising though.
You should honestly just try and rent one for a day.
Sure.
Like, I would say there are people out there who have Mustangs.
Sure.
Just rent one.
Yeah.
And just see what it's like for yourself, because you'll be shocked. But then again, if you drive it in the right way, it's great.
Well, I've been told that about Mustang, certainly that age of Mustang, and it was like, as soon as I was told this, I was like, oh, of course. And they were like, okay, take any car, and they were like, okay, here you go, take this beautiful 67 hatchback Mustang, this beautiful car,
the bullet kind of
the bullet.
Bullet.
That is the vision that I get is Steve McQueen racing around San Francisco. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Dark green.
So
Mustang.
cool.
Yeah.
And so much power, as you're talking about.
Yes.
But the person was saying, they were like, you take a 2006 Toyota Camry, and that thing handles infinitely better.
100%. No
the
question.
Mustang.
My Mazda,
and I was like,
my Mazda daily driver handles better than one of those, because the suspension is modern.
Yeah.
It's not prehistoric. It's not springs with all kind, on leaves and shit. Like it's way.
What do they call them when you basically take the body and you completely
redo
the guts and you make
mod.
this a resto mod? Yeah.
Well, sort of. You could do. Yeah. I mean, it's like a retro mod, resto mod. Any of those words sort of fit it. But yeah, you just
like new suspension, power steering.
I actually want to do that with the Imperial.
Oh, is that a plan? Okay.
This is like a secret plan, but I'm happy to unveil it on this show.
Cool.
Right now, is that my plan for both the Beetle and the Imperial, which I still own. We're developing technology for hub motors. Why don't we start slapping them on these cars? And they're perfect. The perfect building blocks, right? So you've got the Imperial, which weighs 2.5 tons. It's 19 feet long. It's 7 feet wide. The thing is a boat. It's a 4-door hardtop. It weighs, 2.6 tons.
Yeah,
it's huge, but it has a lot of space. You'll pull the V8 out, because it was never really that special. It's a 440.
Yeah,
it's a good V8, but it's a 440 wedge head and the 727 torque flights. It's okay.
Okay.
You pull all that shit out. You put batteries in it. You put 4 hubs on it. See what happens. Crank it up. See what happens. If you can get that thing to move under its own power and do really well with range statistics and do some testing, what a cool piece of tech there. Then, same with the Beetle. Rear-wheel drive, hubs, batteries, call it a day.
Cool.
And just convert them to electric. Make them really nice, obviously, and stuff, and make them really pretty and well manicured and everything. Because again, the last thing I want to do is slap some shit in and have exposed wires hanging out or whatever. You make it really pretty.
Yeah.
But then they become sort of test vehicles for maybe the next generation of vehicles that we would want to make. Because who says that cars are off the table?
Yeah.
Nobody has.
It's a good point.
None of that shit's off the table. We're developing the tech. We're gonna have the tech. So you never know. But it would be so fun to have an electric Imperial, to have an electric Bug. They're cool little cars, and just because there's not a 1,000 explosions going on in front of you all the time doesn't necessarily take away from it.
Sure.
Plus, the engine on the Imperial was always so quiet. It's a 440, but it was very quiet because it was tuned like a Winnebago. Basically, the cam and everything, the way that it's tuned is very quiet, very torquey, but very quiet because it's a luxury car.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't really even notice the difference.
Oh,
It would
that
be
makes
very
sense.
smooth and go and just sort of float.
Are you familiar with what the English call a Q car?
A Q car.
Yeah.
Wait, am I?
So I learned about this. It's actually about I learned it through Paul Newman, who was a fantastic race car driver.
Yeah.
Like in his
Newman
later
was great.
years,
Yeah, Newman was fantastic.
that was like he became the guy who was like, I want to be a race car driver,
Right.
who's kind of known for his acting,
Right.
not the other way around,
Sure,
or
sure.
like not like I'm a actor and I race on the side,
Right.
And so he was a competitive racer, but he was obsessed with Q cars, and I think the reference is to James Bond, and
Right.
Q made up his car. He would put fucking
Right.
missiles behind the
It's like a sleeper then, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Okay.
so Paul Newman was obsessed with taking these very domestic cars
And turning them into sleepers.
he had
Yeah.
this Volvo station wagon, and he dropped a V8 in it,
Yeah.
and people would and he lived in this kind of somewhat sleepy town in Connecticut, but he and actually Redford owned property there, and people would see him and they'd roll up to a stoplight and he would waste them
Yep.
with this roaring engine out of this soccer mom car.
I mean, I had friends who used to do that shit all the time. I had a friend of mine who put a really powerful Porsche engine in
cool.
Beetle,
Uh-huh.
and that's a scary thing. Anyway, because it's a fucking Porsche engine, and
Yeah.
so he'd pull up and he kept the outside kind of beat up,
Uh-huh.
kind of dirty looking and stuff, But there was a giant, shiny, beautiful, like massive Porsche engine in the back. He'd pull up to a stoplight with like a new Camaro sitting there, and the Camaro would like vroom, 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 want to race him, and he'd be like, all right, and smoke him instantly off the line because the Beetle weighs nothing.
Yeah.
And it was an early Beetle too. It was like a 62 or something like that. Like
Okay.
One day I was like, how light are these things? These things are pretty light. He was like, grab that, and we picked it up. Just him and I just
Wow.
picked it up from the front because there's just no weight. Those early ones, those early 60s, late 50s ones, so light.
That's
So
incredible.
if you throw a Porsche engine in the back, it smokes anything that exists out there today.
That is incredible.
Yeah. He actually there's another friend of mine who did something similar and got busted, got out of a speeding ticket in
Okay.
D.C. because he was doing 130 miles, 140 miles an hour in Washington, D.C., around the mall at like 3 a.m. The cops
Whoa.
pull him over, and he's in a Beetle with a Porsche engine, and he was like, how could I be doing 130 miles an hour? I'm in a fucking Beetle. Like, what do you want? And they're like, oh, yep, sorry, that's our mistake. And let him off.
Sorry, that's a technical error on our part.
Exactly. And he was like, thank you. Yeah, of course. I'm in a Beetle. It has 40 horsepower. What do you want?
That's
So,
incredible.
yeah, it's super funny. So, shit happens. It's
Well-
fine. Sleepers, cue cars, yeah.
Yes. Sleepers. That's the
Right,
word.
right.
I think that's the
That's
American
like the West
version.
Coast. That's like the West Coast,
West Coast version.
I think. Well, I mean, it's
And I
just
think
really the American version.
The
I've heard
American
on the East
version,
Coast.
yeah. And I think, in Europe they call them Q cars.
Sure.
Of course, it's James Bond.
Yeah.
James Bond country.
Yeah.
But to tie, speed.
Yes.
And to tie it back into bikes.
Sure.
Are you a fan of MotoGP?
Actually, yes. I'm not as a fanatic as such. I don't know too much about it. I'm still learning. Now,
Yeah.
I look at motorcycle racing just in general as a category, as a potential brilliant future for what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? Just as
Electric bike racing.
there's a lot in the works.
Yeah.
There's actually, I mean, the sport is due for a revival, right? And you look at, I'll say this. I won't reveal exactly what our plans are, but I'll say this. Lucid Motors, which is a really amazing electric car manufacturer that you should check out if you haven't.
Okay.
They started in Formula E, basically developing their batteries, and motorsport has always been the principal driver of innovation when it comes to the automotive industry. And I do think that there is a lot of that to come. Now, will it come under the MotoGP badging or branding or whatever? You know what I mean? Like in that same way? Who knows? I've seen there's actually, I'll look this up. I think it's called ESC, and you'll love this. And we'll send it to you, and you can feature it in the video.
Cool.
Electric scooter racing. like the Lime scooters that you ride around in downtown. You've seen those things?
The uprights. They're basically razors with a motor.
Yeah. So these guys, and at first I was like, this is stupid. This is fucking dumb. Like, whatever. But I watched their video, right? And it's actually super fucking cool. Like, I know that sounds weird, but holy shit, this is so cool. So what they did is they took those scooter designs, they engineered their own, the twin hub as well, which is actually kind of cool. Then they made the body out of like hemp and combustible materials, which is also great.
Okay. They
go like 60 kilometers an hour. They're fast, and they're going to different cities, setting up races. They're a net carbon neutral festival thing, race. They're conscious of stuff. They've got the whole system set up. They are on top of it, and their marketing is brilliant. The races look phenomenal. And
what kind of courses are they on?
Inner city stuff. So like small, harsh corners.
How much can you?
The angle is insane. The speeds are insane.
Are you able to bank on a turn?
Yeah.
In those?
Yeah.
Are they modified?
Yeah.
So
these guys build the scooters.
They're different.
And then I guess the teams can modify them. I'm not quite sure how that breaks down, but like ultimately these things are fast.
Wow.
They're fast. They're cool looking. The riders are like, it's like a contact sport. Like you're like right up with people.
Oh, you're jockeying
while
for
you're going 60 kilometers an hour.
No.
Like
way.
It
we gotta
really cool. And I know
you gotta show me this.
Stupid, but it seriously, I was like, I watched it, and by the end of it, it's like a 10-minute video that they've put out.
Cool.
I was like, oh shit, we got to bring that to Denver. That would be super cool, or like Fort Collins or something like that. Like one of these places, like Colorado, and just in general, would be super cool.
Is there a like an epicenter? Is there a birthplace of where this started?
I think they're British.
Okay.
The UK is like way more up on this shit than anybody gives them credit for. Like, we've had so much interest from people in the UK who are like, let us know when you need a dealership. Let us know when you need distribution partners.
Wow.
Like, out of everywhere, that's the one that has done it. Yeah, they've done it the most because, oh my God. Like they're way more into this shit. They're already organizing races. They're already organizing all kinds of other stuff. They're on top of it.
Yeah,
like by a long shot. But okay, that's a very long-winded way of saying I like MotoGP and I think it's due for a revolution because I think bike racing has been kind of ignored for a little while and is sort of like needs a rejuvenation.
Yeah. Well, I got into MotoGP for about 2 years in a big way, 2014 to 2016.
Nice.
And then I just started to fall off of it a little bit because I was like, oh, this is a rich guy sport. Like,
yeah, and that's kind of the other thing is that's why these like scooter races seem so cool to me.
It's a little more accessible.
Egalitarian.
Yeah.
Accessible.
So I've already done one gratuitous name drop with Robert Redford in the pod.
Sure.
But I'm going to do one. I'm going to one up myself.
Give me.
And the person who got me into MotoGP is Brad Pitt.
So Brad Pitt, it's funny because I have some friends who are like, as Brad Pitt ages, he's just turning into Robert Redford. So I think that's
totally
hilarious. Like,
I
mean, if you watch like his career, like when you look at him at Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like he's looking more Redford-y than I've ever seen.
You are absolutely right. When I saw Spy Game, Tony Scott's Spy Game, I was like, this is the passing of the torch.
Yeah.
This is the
Redford,
hot guy
Redford giving it
for the last 4 decades.
It's so true.
Yeah, he's passing it off to the next guy who's going to age into handsomely beautiful and old.
I see commercials with Brad Pitt now, and I'm like, that's just Robert Redford. Like that's just he's turning into Robert Redford so slowly, but that no one has noticed except me and you.
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, I'm so proud that they're my two name drops.
He got you into MotoGP, huh?
He did. So I was working a film festival, and he was up for and actually won Best Picture for 12 Years a Slave. He was a producer on that.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
And so he was there for that to receive this award, and I was a talent liaison of sorts, and I was with him for a period of time throughout the day.
Right.
And it's an 8-hour day, and I probably had a chunk of time with him that was like 4 to 5 hours. And we're taking him around to different like sponsorship and things, and people are giving him all kind like
Big stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and I was working in tandem with Piaget Watch, and like
Oh.
Piaget would gave him like Jesus, I don't
Couple
know.
of watches, yeah.
Oh, they gave him probably
a lot
like
of watches.
they probably gave him a couple $100,000 worth of watches, in the hopes that he would wear one, and the tabloids would take a photograph, and then their
that
stock
marketing
would.
strategy's fucking dead.
Isn't
But
that wild?
anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
That's old school. I mean,
know,
this is
I
yeah,
know.
this is
It's
back in like
so-
2012 or
That's
so.
crazy, isn't it? That they used to do shit like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is it? Yeah. That was well, and I mean, I met him in the Piaget tent, and
Nice.
we're all kind of in a circle or whatever, and I thought it was just so polite that he gave me his name, and I'm like, I know who you are, motherfucker.
But he's like, oh hey, I'm Brad.
Yeah, I'm Brad.
Brad, don't worry. Yeah, I'm Brad. I'm Brad. Don't mind me.
Yeah.
You don't know? Oh, I'm Brad.
Such a super nice guy, very nice guy,
Oh,
and
God.
but there's a lot of waiting time before
Yeah, sure,
we
sure.
roll on this award ceremony,
Mhm.
and he's like, hey man, are you a MotoGP fan? And I was like, no.
But I
What's
could
that?
be
Yeah,
if
I was
you
like, what's
want
all
me
that?
to.
What's that all about? I'm very easily influenced by you.
You specifically being here
Yeah,
right now.
you don't even have
yeah.
to be in the room, and I'm I'm really influenced by you.
I love this. Yeah.
And he was like, oh man, there's a so he's like it's motorcycle racing, but it's a Grand Prix and is the fastest bikes. I mean, these guys are going 260 miles an hour.
Yeah, like
around
scary
the track.
fast. Scary fast, yeah.
Terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they drop below 200, it's rare.
Mm.
Like it's just operating at such a high speed.
That's Damon's territory as far as electric shit is concerned.
Oh, that's what Damon does. I did see them in my research.
200 mile range, 200 miles an hour. Wow. They're the next like, and they're doing really well too. I mean, they started being quite expensive and a little bit inaccessible, and I think they still are, but their bikes are insanely fast.
Cool.
They're doing a lot of similar things, which is
Yeah.
good because it's proliferation of mutual tech. Like
Okay.
I'm fine with that. But the thing about their shit is that, they're the speed kings. They're the speed
Cool.
kings. They're the
Okay.
ones who are going to break that sort of 200-mile barrier, 200-mile-per-hour barrier rather. And they just raised a
Cool.
lot of money. They're doing very well. So they're the next like sort of Ducati version of what we're probably looking at. you know?
Wow. Okay.
Or maybe Moto Guzzi, something like that. You know, they're
Okay.
the fast bike. Though.
Okay.
They're the fast one.
As
So-
a quick sidebar, I'm
Sure.
curious because I've seen a lot of really great photographs of
Yeah, yeah.
Brad Pitt riding on beautiful classic
And
bikes.
he likes Triumphs a lot of the time, doesn't he?
Triumph, I think
Yeah.
so. There's a bike that he rides, and it's this big. I don't know exactly what it would be, but he shifts down here, like with his hand.
Oh.
It's this old school,
Fuck.
and comes back up to the handle. Do you is that familiar with you at all?
I haven't seen this bike.
Okay, I'll have to pull up the photo and see if we can figure it out together.
Incredibly ridiculous.
Well, I ride. When I was saying I'm a
Yeah.
avid cyclist.
Yeah.
I ride an old Trek from the 80s,
Mm.
and it still has the suicide shifters down on the.
Oh, the little things.
yeah. So I don't
Yeah,
shift
yeah.
up here.
Yeah.
It's not
I
fancy.
had an old Peugeot like that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, they used to. Or was
So
it
you
Peugeot?
reach down,
Yeah.
and when I saw that photo of him riding this bike, and he goes down and changes
And is
the
it
gear.
on the left hand? I'm curious. Do you remember if it was on the left hand side or the right hand side? Because it would kind of make sense if it was on the left hand side. Do you know what I mean? As like a shifter here.
Let me think which direction.
could
Yeah,
have
maybe
reversed the
he
film.
maybe he is
Because you know
driving. The camera's on his left side,
Right.
and he's reaching down
Because if it's
and shifting.
that's traditional with
where your
your shifter
shifter
is,
is on this
so you're-
left leg.
So
yeah.
that kind of makes sense, but still fucking dangerous. That's just fucking insane. I would love him to ride one of our bikes actually, but I saw what was it? Was it a perfume commercial? I don't remember. Just the other day with him, and he's looking very Redford,
Yeah.
very Redford, and he gets on like a Triumph Scrambler with the thing off. They took the badging off of it,
Okay.
and then he goes to a coffee shop, and then he comes back, and he's very contemplative, and there's some Italian music going on, and I think it's an ad for perfume. I forget. They're very nebulous. These days.
Perfume or watches or
They're very
clean energy. Who knows?
I
What they
don't
were.
remember if it was one of those. It was something like that. But anyway, the thing is, you just watch Brad Pitt go and do some errands, and like literally that's the ad. It's like, hey, can we follow you around for a couple of hours while you go and run some errands on your motorcycle, and then we'll cut it to some like fucking score from some spaghetti western and just call it a day, and then that will be our commercial.
Yeah,
but yeah, he likes vintage stuff. He likes Triumphs, Scramblers, some Ducatis probably. I think he's a Ducati guy. But yeah.
Well, so when throughout the course of this conversation, he's selling me on it.
Yeah, he's trying to like convince you. Which is weird. Brad Pitt convincing you of something. You know what I mean? Like he's like, no, really, it's great. Like coming from him, like he would have to prove something to anybody.
Like you could convince me of so much right now,
bro. I get it. Like it's good. Okay, like you're telling me to watch it, I will watch it. Like you don't need to convince me. You're fucking Brad Pitt. Okay, like
you're my pinnacle of cool.
I'll at least take a look. Okay, like at the very least, like you don't need to convince me.
But he's talking about this race that's going on live in Italy. And he's like, man, I wish I could be watching this right now. I was like, is there a way to pull it up easily? He's like, you got an internet connection? I was like, I'm going to run back to my office and I'm going to get a laptop.
And we're going to watch this shit.
And so I ran back to my trailer and got a laptop.
Good, man.
And we sat and watched, and he told me, he taught me MotoGP. And it was a very impressive era. One guy who's still very dominant. Actually, I was at the gym the other day, and this young kid, real handsome kid in his own right, Marc Marquez. He was in second place, and it was neck and neck in this race that happened last weekend.
Right.
So that's all these years later. This guy's still dominating, but this young kid, when we were watching it together, he was maybe 18 or 19 years old, and he's like, "You got to watch out for this Marc Marquez. This guy, he's coming for everybody's title. This is the guy."
This is the guy.
Well, and I remember watching one of the guys, Marcos Simoncelli. And he was talking about this. He's a wild man. Man, he is fun to watch. And like, he's this Italian guy. He takes off his helmet. He's got this big Italian fro, and he's got personality for days.
A lot of passion. Yeah.
And he's telling me all about this. And this is 2012 or so. And then in 2014, Simoncelli dies during a race.
Oh.
Do you know this?
Yes, a little bit. Okay, so keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got really into this. Of course, it was just
during
like
a race,
right?
Yeah.
It was during a race.
Yeah.
And he cut a corner that he was notorious for
doing that.
For cutting people off, for nudging people out, and another racer at the time, Lorenzo, they would get in these like all near physical altercations at the press conference afterwards, where they're like, which is so funny hearing broken English, and they're yelling at each other, and he's like, "You motherfucker, you cut me off one more time, and we will never race again."
I know. That's my family reunions usually. Yeah, I get that every family reunion.
And his aggression on the track was his undoing, and it's so sad to see. And you see, it's almost a mistake. Like it isn't that it is a full aggression. He's so deep into the apex. That he's what do they say? As you're taking that turn, it's hitting the apex.
Yeah.
It's you slow down just enough to hit that turn, and you are banking just right, and then bang, you give it all throttle.
Yeah.
He loses the front tire a little bit, and instead of bailing and what he should have done, which is go out, he throttled, and it brought him right into the line of fire, and the next guy just rolled right over him.
Yep.
Rolled right across of him, and you see the crash happen, and it's disaster. This happened, I think, in 2014, 2015.
I vaguely remember that there was,
it was actually kind of
a big deal, because there usually isn't a lot of death anymore.
No.
There
surprisingly,
there used to be You know?
The protection that they're wearing, those full suits that they're wearing, are incredible at keeping these guys alive.
Absolutely.
And the way this accident happened, you see just devastation, and then you see Simoncelli's helmet just roll.
Yeah.
It was like he lost his helmet. The tire just went right up the back of his neck.
And you're done. Yeah, you're done.
Yeah. They took that turn at 180, maybe between 180 and 220. They took that turn.
That's not a recoverable speed. I mean, you know, and that's the nice thing, though, I will say about this sport is that there is sort of a lot less death now.
Mm-hmm.
It is still dangerous. There's no question. That's not saying that it is, but it's a little bit more rare that people die. I mean, do you remember like the early days of like actual car racing?
Yeah.
You know, where like what the reason why Mercedes doesn't do a lot of racing anymore is early on. Do you remember this? Early on, a car got into a crash and a Mercedes engine went into the crowd and like killed a bunch of people,
a dozen people,
and
something.
They were like, we feel so bad, this is horrible, so we will no race anymore. And like that was, but I guess it was routine, you know. At that point in time, it was dangerous, and you had people like right up against the edge, you know, kind of watching, waiting, and hood goes flying, car parts go flying, decapitates like 5 people. You know, it was. I remember that. It was dangerous.
I remember hearing about it.
Yeah, they're dangerous sports, but now there's more safety. There's the suits. You know, there's the tech that we've developed. Not we, but you know, as humanity have developed to protect things. You know? And like even this jacket that I wear as a jacket. It's amazing that this will protect the shit out of me because it's got pads, it's got all kinds of stuff like in the shoulders. If I fall off a bike going 50 miles an hour, I could ride on this thing for a good amount of time without getting road rash, really. You know, it's a good thing.
That and a helmet on, you're gonna come out with.
You're gonna be okay. Like
you're gonna be
as long as you don't hit something while you're sliding. Yeah, that's really always the danger. Is that you know it depends on how you go off. And really, I found riding again and like getting back into riding, and I kind of forgot this over the years, but I've found that really the trick is being able to anticipate pretty much everybody else's movements. Yeah. Right. So if you're behind a car, you know, you're a lane over and you're behind a car, you basically have to be like, is that guy going to turn left? Is he going to come into this lane? Is he going to go straight? Is he going to take a right? What's going to happen? And then if somebody's pulling up, do they see me? I don't know if they see me. You basically have to think like that all the time.
Hyper aware.
Absolutely. Hyper aware. Very, very like conscientious of. I mean, I plan out the routes incessantly before I ride anywhere. And I sometimes will, like today, actually, yesterday I was going to a meeting, and I was like, oh, I wonder if this West 14th Street is actually a decent route to ride on a motorcycle to get into town from this area or whatever. And I rode in it in the car just to check it out. It's okay. You know, there's some blind spots. There's some school zones where kids are running around. There's some dogs that are off leash, shit like that. You know, and you got to be careful about that shit. And especially if you've never ridden that route before, I'm always super cautious of that shit. Because one person texting, doesn't know, misses a stop sign in one of those neighborhoods.
Split second.
You're done. You know? And like if I have visibility and I see somebody coming up to the thing, I'm always like, do they see me? Do they see me? If they don't, my foot is already on the brake. I'm ready to go. You know what I mean? I'm ready to just hit the brakes pretty much immediately, because that's the biggest bane of my existence is people who don't see you, basically. And it's the biggest bane of any motorcycle rider's existence is constantly have to be hyper aware. And I hate to harp on this too much, but we've got a lot of safety systems that can help that sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like, we want to implement some level of LiDAR and stuff like that. That would really help things, you know, especially from behind when you can't see things. Next gen of helmets. There's so much there.
You were telling me about the next gen helmets, man. That was blowing my mind. When you're talking about safety, I'm reminded of, and his last name is Stewart. He was a Formula One racer back in the 60s and 70s.
Jimmy Stewart?
Jimmy? Was it James Stewart?
It James? It's always a J name, probably, right?
Yeah, and he's like
Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah.
No. Anyway,
I like to race cars.
Oh, Christ. No.
He's a Scottish fella.
I like to race
Stewart.
cars.
Yeah.
Cars. Oh God, we're so in trouble. We're so screwed, bro.
This
so
what's his
screwed.
name? Okay, so he's a Formula One racer. There's a fantastic film. It's called Weekend of the Champion, and it's a Polanski film. So Polanski was friends with this guy.
Wait,
Stewart.
the Lotus guy. Is it the Lotus? Maybe? Is it the Lotus guy?
It's Formula One racing, and they're in Monaco.
We're gonna look this up.
So it's the Monaco race. Please, yes. Okay, Stewart. I've been trying to think of it the last 20 minutes because I want to tell you about it.
With a T, I'm sorry. Stewart.
Yes.
Stewart. Not Copeland. Nope. Racing.
The last name is Stewart.
Right.
Yeah.
But it came up as I typed in
Oh,
Stewart.
sure.
It said Stewart Copeland. I was like, no, that's not right. Racing. Jackie Stewart.
Jackie.
Yes.
Oh
he
my
was
God.
He was the Lotus guy, bro. He was. Wasn't he? I thought he was the Lotus guy.
Was he Lotus?
Hold on.
I just know he had.
Jack. I thought he was. Okay. First entry, 1965 South African Grand Prix.
Okay. Yeah, he's
First
a Grand
win.
Prix champion.
65
Stewart.
Italian Grand Prix.
Yeah.
And then he raced all the way until 73.
So, Weekend of the Champion
Mm-hmm.
is a fantastic documentary, and Polanski is in it. They're friends together. It's probably within 2 years of Polanski's wife being murdered by the Manson
right
family.
there. Yeah.
Like he's in mourning.
So he makes this film.
But he makes this film, and with his friend Jackie. And I bring it up because Jackie Stewart was very instrumental in creating more safety regiments within Formula Racing, and he saved hundreds of lives.
Back then, those cars were so unsafe. I mean, we're talking about the 60s. What were we talking about? Early 70s, 60s?
It really was a death race.
Oh, my God. They had no
especially
roll
in
cages.
Monaco.
Oh.
Like
Monaco,
you're in such tight quarters. I've been to Monaco, and I wish I'd been there for the race. That's now a bucket list for me. Is to go back to Monaco. I mean, it's a totally different race now. Nobody's shifting like this or a
lot of this or this.
Yeah,
this,
paddles and
yeah.
It's like
I would love to go there, but
But you see Jackie as a true savant when it comes to his craft, and he and Polanski go and they put themselves on a part of the track during a test run. And Jackie, he's already aced this course. He's won it. He's won Monaco,
which is
3 years or something at this point.
Race.
Yeah,
and we should say to anybody watching out there is that that's a very difficult course. It's teeny tiny, like you're saying. It's very fast. It's very crowded. It's very unsafe. There's so many tight corners.
The tightest of corners, where truly you have to slow down to like 30 miles an hour to corner this crazy, or maybe even less. Like you gotta make almost a 180 turn.
Yeah.
To take this, like
it's impossible.
It's incredible the strategy that these guys are making, and it was so cool that he and Polanski sit on top of this kind of this riser hill that goes right into a turn, and you listen to Jackie Stewart critiquing other drivers around their method.
Oh, shit.
So it is this masterclass in Formula One racing where he's like, do you see that there? He is braked. He broke right before they come up over it. Like, as soon as he brakes, it puts more weight on those front tires. He's got more weight, and now he's taking that turn, and he's losing the back tail.
That's pretty good Jackie Stewart, actually.
Thank you.
That's actually a pretty... I've heard recordings of this guy. I know what he sounds like. That's pretty good Jackie Stewart, actually.
You.
Damn. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad at all.
Thank you.
Also, it's pretty amazing to hear somebody like that who and I've heard stories about him and even like Ken Miles, who again, Ford versus Ferrari, you gotta watch. They get into a car and they drive around a track for a couple of minutes and they know exactly what's going on. These are like...
Is that the Christian Bale character?
And Matt Damon. And Matt Damon plays Carroll Shelby. He does a very good job at that.
Well, Miles is the guy that I know of.
Yeah, Ken Miles.
Like, I don't know the full story of the film. I need to see it. But Ken Miles, when it came up, and I was like, holy shit, like, they've got Bale playing Miles. Like
He
I
does
didn't
a really good job
when the
too.
Fighter came out. I didn't know.
Yeah.
I only knew Mickey Ward. I was too young to know who Dick
Right.
Eklund was.
Right.
But then once I found out the story and what like the brother sister and was like, oh my God, you got Christian Bale doing it? Yeah.
He is. Just take a moment. He is a remarkable actor to go from Dick Cheney to like Ken Miles to his entire career is just so. You almost forget that he's in some of these.
Is he like this swinging pendulum?
He's insane. I mean, he must be insane. It would be really interesting to have like a lunch with the guy or something.
Yeah.
Talk to him just not talk to him about his movies, but just talk to him because it's like
talk about stuff.
Just
yeah.
stuff. Like, what are you interested in? Like, what music do you listen to? Like, I would love to know.
I'd be fascinated by that.
Because it probably won't be anything.
When you
super
work out
but,
in the morning. What do you listen to?
Or do you work out in the when do you work out? Like even just like what the hell, man? He's crazy. But
he's like, to be honest, I really like to be awakened in the middle of the night, and my trainer says, "You train now, motherfucker."
Yeah, Jesus Christ. He's not you do really need to watch. I mean, I gotta
watch it.
I didn't realize you're this much of a gearhead, to be honest. It's actually quite interesting.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, because you've got a lot of you know a lot more than the average bear. You know what I mean? Like the average cat who's around. Well, the average Harley driver.
I appreciate that. I mean, I see you as like somebody who really is a gearhead. I think I have an appreciation for what motors have brought to culture.
Sure.
And the culture that surrounds them. In a way that I'm like, I want to kind of get closer to it.
Right.
That's a great compliment. That's all I should say.
Well, and I will say this, you, I think, are more on the cultural side than I am as far as gearhead culture and stuff. I mean, I used to watch Top Gear when I was young. You know what I mean? But
cool.
that was like my foray. I never really watched racing too much. Never really watched MotoGP too much. I would like to, again, sort of come in and maybe do something a little different. Mm-hmm. But I'm just now sort of starting to realize that. I think the other thing, though, too, is that, again, you're the culture side of things. I'm looking at it from more of an engineering perspective. And on top of that, the book that I've talked to some other people about, too, this whole thing, I read ages ago. It's called, and it's a classic, Zen and the Art. Yeah, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right? So when you do the comparison of, like, the engineering side of things and then the aesthetics of the engineering, so you sort of get an appreciation of how beautiful the engineering can be, how beautiful the math and sciences can be, the carburetors and the way that it's set up. And again, that's why I love the Beamer. Everything is in such a tight little package. They hide the air box behind things, and it's it's all sealed off and beautiful and everything. And then Harleys in their own way are very beautiful in some ways because of the way that they're imbalanced and the way that they're unstable and the way that they kill people. But the thing about it is that all of the technical side of things, they have their own level of beauty in some ways, and that appreciation came luckily pretty early-ish for me, and it sort of influenced the way that I look at aesthetics as a whole, I suppose, because none of the this is too mathy or sciencey was ever discounted, right? That's still beautiful in a lot of ways aesthetically to me, because to make something like an engine work, you even look at a regular combustion motorcycle versus one of ours. There are so many more components on a combustion motorcycle than on one of ours. Many more. I mean, we've got motors, we've got batteries, computer components. That's pretty much it. You look at an engine, there's a bunch of components in there. There's push rods, there's valves, there's seals, there's springs, there's all these other things that go into an engine. That make it, so much more kind of complicated. And all of these things have to work just in unison to make one thing happen, which is power happening to the wheels, and a clutch and a transmission and all of these other things. With us, it's like, okay, power, go, electricity, batteries, done. It's not that complicated. It's complicated to do it well, but it's not that complicated.
Sure.
That's the thing. The weird thing about it.
I received Zen, the book, as a straight up random gift. And it was at a dinner party, and I was talking to this young guy, and he was an English guy, and he wasn't even like, hey, I'm a motorcycle guy. I don't see myself as that.
You don't even have to be a motorcycle guy to read it. It actually has
that's a good point.
Yeah, it has a lot of really cool insights.
Yeah.
But carry on.
Well,
I'll
he
bring
just
one to you.
it was basically like he got up from the table and went over to his library and brought it back, and he's like, I would like you to have this. And I was so, and he's like,
yeah,
and he's like, don't say anything, just rate it.
Just rate it.
Yeah, and I was like,
rate it.
I was like, thank you. And it's tattered, it's beat up. And I was like,
those are the best ones.
I was like, I need to get your mailing address so I can send it back to you. And he's like, give it to someone else. Yeah, it was such a wonderful thing, and I have yet to do that. But I think I'm keeping it in my library for that moment that it comes up in conversation
or something.
Yes,
and you just...
where I can say to anybody who is talking about bikes, or it just is like, boy, this person would really benefit from this, and I can hand it to them.
You know what the thing about that is that it's somebody who's looking for answers, right? You notice somebody who. One of the things that I absolutely adore about that book, there's this one example, and you probably remember it. It's about the sink, the drippy sink. Do you remember that section of the book?
I do.
That was such a cool thing where he was like, the sink was leaky, and my friend's family was like constantly fighting, but they didn't realize that it was the sink dripping that was the problem, and they just sort of blamed it on everything else. That was just such an underlying stress that it almost blended into the background. Yeah. And because they didn't fix the leaky sink, they were constantly on edge and fighting. But it would have just been so easy. It would have been one turn of the wrench and it would have been fixed.
It's a book of philosophy.
It really it has a lot of that in there. And granted, some of it should be taken with slightly grain of salty. It's not all 100%. But the thing about what is, I guess, is the question. But that thing, yeah, it's huge when it comes to like aesthetics, and understanding and shit. Even though the guy was he a psycho, something like that? Do you remember the story about this?
No,
I heard some.
His background.
I forget, but we don't edit that out. I don't remember. As an aside, holy mother, I think he went like crazy or something later on.
Okay,
I don't remember.
We'll have to go into it, but
I'll have to look that up, actually.
He had a stroke of brilliance when writing this, and maybe it was just pure flow state.
And it was also experiential, right?
Yeah.
Everything he wrote about in that was totally experiential and was like sort of first person-y, like.
True.
And he talked about his friend who was a Beamer guy, which I think is hilarious because now I'm one.
Yeah.
And I totally see that in the BMW community, and I actually understand his friend more. When I read it the first time, I was like, I don't know. I'd still work on my bike. But now that I own a Beamer, I look at that thing and I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm working on that bike.
Yeah.
Because I'm too much of a brute. That thing is a delicate, beautiful work of art. I don't want to fuck it up. I am too intimidated by it because it is, and the one that I have is clean. It's got 27,000 miles on it, and it's 1972, and it's original, and it's beautiful. It is a clean bike. I'll send you a picture of it, and you can
please.
Put it up on the podcast.
Oh my God, please do.
It's a beautiful, beauuful bike.
Would you ever let me ride it around the block
of course.
or like around a parking lot?
Yeah. Duh.
God,
just gotta come down to Denver because it's not coming up here anymore. Because it's a pain in the ass to get it up here. But the thing about it is that I look at that and I'm like, holy shit! I totally kind of get this guy now. That it's not necessarily about that I don't enjoy working on motors. I do. I actually like working on motors. I pulled out my old Motobecane that I have. Got 2 Motobecanes mopeds, and I started fiddling with it, and I actually know exactly what's wrong with it. I've got to put some gas, do some little wrenching, and we're good. But with the Beamer, it's too delicate. It's too beautiful. And I feel like I'm just going to over-torque a nut one time or do some little thing and ruin it.
Yeah.
And I'm too intimidated by it almost.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
Just because it's like an experience thing. Like
I
haven't really worked on Beamers that much and would love to learn, but do I really want to learn on this lovely example of one?
So you don't tinker too much with your own bike?
Oh, I do. If it's a bike that like I don't feel intimidated
with the Beamer?
And I've done a little bit of stuff on it. Like I do know that over the winter when the season's done, there's 2 things I need to do. I need to do push rod seals, which is going to be tricky. I don't know if I'm going to do that myself because to do the push, this is very pedantic, but this is quite pedantic. But the thing about it is push rod seals, you have to take the entire head off.
Okay.
And you have to pull the wall of the piston.
Yeah.
So you have to pull the cylinder itself, And
Okay.
then you replace just a tiny little rubber seal that sits on the engine casing.
Yeah.
On both sides because it's
Okay.
leaking oil.
Okay.
Easy peasy. So easy peasy is easy peasy, but it also requires pulling a lot of parts off the engine and then putting them back on in a nice, clean, precise way that doesn't damage any of those components. And I've done it on other bikes. I've done it on mopeds a million times. I feel confident about it, but I also feel like, oh no, what if this is the time I fuck it up?
Okay.
And then I have to try and find a new piston sidewall and shit like, and I've got to do all, it's like nerve wracking.
Sure.
But I know that the carbs need a new starter jet, and I've got to rejet the carbs. This is so pedantic. I'm so sorry. The BMW system has twin carbs, so it's got two petcocks, twin carbs feed down on either side because it's got two pistons. Each carb has their own starter jet, and my BMW, which is very rare for BMWs, is very sluggish at idle. It's a very strange thing for BMWs not to want to wake up. Usually, if you just kick it, and mine's kickstart, so you've got to kick it, and if you've got the throttle open and you've given the carbs a little bit of gas via what's called the ticklers,
Okay.
press those down for 3 seconds, puts gas in the carbs, and then you open the throttle and you kick, it should fire.
Okay.
Mine doesn't want to do that, and it also doesn't want to stay going.
Okay.
You've got to rev it and keep it going, and then as soon as it's warm, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But the problem is I think there's an issue with the starter jet. I think it's jetted too lean and it's not getting enough fuel. So I got to take the carbs on both sides off, take them apart, pull out the starter jets, put new ones in.
Okay.
20 minutes. No biggie.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things where I'm just going to wait until the end of the season and
Yeah.
do the push rod seals and do the jets and get it done. Or see how much it's going to cost for somebody else to do the push rod seals, because again, if I can pay somebody who's experienced, who's an old Beamer guy, I feel much better about it. I don't feel like I'm potentially ruining a piece of history. There was only like a couple thousand of them made, so they're not exactly like abundant. Do you know what I mean? I have this habit of buying things that are like rare endangered species, and then I'm like, oh no, I can't work on them because I'm too intimidated by it.
Sure. Well,
But-
how cool is it that one of them is in your possession?
Our 50/5s, very rare. They only really made them for a couple of years, and then they exclusively made our 60s, 5, 60s, basically.
God, that's
The
cool.
600s, yeah. Just because they were a little underpowered, but they're cool bikes, direct
That's
drive,
awesome.
all Beamers, direct drive. The Imperial was always a little bit easier to work on because underneath, it's the exterior was always the dangerous part, right? So any dents or anything on the exterior, you're super fucked because
Okay.
there's only like 3,000 of them ever made and like 50 of them left.
Yeah.
So if you got into an accident or something like that, you're fucked. But underneath, it's just all Dodge. Like
Okay.
the 440 platform was ubiquitous. The 727 torque flight transmission was ubiquitous. They existed across all Dodges.
Yeah.
I could go to Auto Parts, or I could like go to AutoZone right now
And get parts.
and get like a fuel pump for a 66 Imperial like that, and they would have it sitting there, which is kind of insane if you think about it.
It really is.
But it's just because it was a very common platform underneath.
Okay.
Which
Okay.
again, from a manufacturing perspective, is good to know.
Wow, that's incredible.
Mhm.
You get that all those decades later.
Yeah, in an auto parts store in 2021, I could walk in
Yeah.
and be like, I need a oil pump for a 1966 Imperial, and they would have it because it's technically a Dodge.
Yeah.
And then they would say, okay, it's a 440 wedge. Cool. These are the pumps we have that fit it. Here you go. Gone.
Nice.
So, it wasn't that bad.
Mhm.
Same with the Beetle. The Beetle was, 50 million of them or whatever. So you walk out into a field and stumble across a part for it. Probably, they're just around.
That's a good point.
Yeah, they're everywhere. The Beetle's like you never have to buy parts. Just go to a junkyard and salvage parts.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah, unless
Find
it's
your own
something-
parts. Yeah.
Unless it's something important, like I used to do that. I used to just go and be like, "Oh, cool, wow, okay, well,
I'll
that.
take this.
Yeah, I'll take
Yeah.
that. Oh, cool, sweet. I needed running boards for this, or I needed trim or whatever. Like, take that, thank you, and pay $5, and then you get it. Easy peasy, because they have 30 Beetles there, and they're not gonna miss running boards from one and trim from another. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Okay, Anthony,
Sorry, I just
let's-
continue to talk.
No, I liked it, man. Dude, I like it, man. That's the whole point of this. I want us to go
Totally.
to go deep dive into whatever subject, whatever art form that somebody is really dedicated to. And that's I mean, that's you, and you put yourself in many different lanes. This is a lane that I think is so cool, and I didn't see coming, as I said before. I definitely thought that you would be some kind of fashionista icon.
Yeah, I mean,
and that might come down the line.
Yeah, it was set up for it, you know.
Like I thought maybe you'd be some kind of Tom Ford, who was like the super fashion dude who also was into the arts, and maybe you started like maybe
life's
you were
long. Life's
long, man.
BMW
and you're young.
Yeah. BMW could swoop in, you know, do some stuff. We take some money, go into the next venture. You know?
But right now, it's Zeiser Motors.
It is 100%.
Yeah,
it's a good time, honestly. Yeah, it's definitely slightly a departure from Salt, but you know, it's been. I think this is the realization that a lot of people had during the pandemic is that you might as well life's kind of short, and you know, living in this world can be kind of tough, so you might as well do exactly what you want to do, and something that ideally makes you a little bit of money and is exactly what you want to do.
Yeah,
and that's what it was. You know, that's this is like, holy shit, we're innovating on something, we're doing something really exciting, and we're building something that we want to ride.
Yeah,
I want it. I want an Arrow just as bad as the pre-order lists, you know, the people who have already signed up for the pre-order list.
Yeah.
You know, like we've got like almost, what is it, 150,000 in pre-orders, technically pre-order lists essentially.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. So like I want a bike just as bad as those cats who are like I want to ride it right now.
Yeah.
So like that's always a good feeling.
Absolutely.
Know, to be building something that like, you know, cool, unique, different, new, that sort of thing.
You're doing what you love, and you're doing a thing that creates something that you want to experience.
But
I don't think that's poetic, man. There's a real beauty to that, and there's a real synergy to that.
Totally.
Where you see a void within the market.
Yep.
And if you have the vision and wherewithal, and I think. Well, you're lucky with your own God-given faculties, and then skill set that you have cultivated, and then also a team that you've brought around this vision.
Absolutely,
with you and Chris, I think there's something really special that you guys are building with Zeiser.
Yep,
and
we've somehow magically found other people, you know, who feel the exact same way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Who like see the idea, understand it intrinsically, and they're off to the races. Fred, Hunter, fucking everybody on the engineering side, everybody on the marketing side, everybody on the design side. Like everybody is kind of in sync with this vision of like, yes, I want that to happen now.
Yeah.
And we're all just basically waiting until all of the funding is in so that everybody can quit their jobs and come work and do this full time. Like that's the whole thing. Like we're waiting. We're close. We're probably like 3-4 months away. But we're going to get there, which is really exciting. So then everybody can just like be like, all right, I'm done with my job. We're going to go work with this full time.
Man, I'm excited for you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
How about we reconnect? I can't wait to have you back in here. This has been
I'll come back anytime.
An effortlessly fun conversation.
I'll come back anytime. We can talk about anything. State of media, you name it. I'm there.
I know you've got such a range. Anthony.
My guy.
Dude, you are a cool cat.
You are a cool cat.
You've been a lot of fun to talk to. And thank you for coming in and doing the show.
Of course. Thank you for having me. This has been great. I love the space. It's so inviting. I could just live here, honestly.
I know, right?
You just like hollow out this. I'll get a cot.
Get a little John Malkovich store in the.
Honestly, I mean, I just live in this place. This is great. I really thank you for having me. This
has been great, Anthony.
Yeah. Anytime.
And this has been Hot Mike. We are out.